Good afternoon. We're here today to discuss Scotty. He is a 50-year-old Caucasian male. He is appearing slightly younger than his stated age. He is single and a recently retired police detective. He was referred by a mental health physician at a San Francisco psychiatric hospital. The client reports experiencing distressing memories of recent traumatic events that are causing recurrent frightening dreams, fear, anxiety, and depression. He has expressed a desire to cope with the loss of a loved one and to gain control over the vertigo he's experienced due to his previously diagnosed fear of heights or acrophobia. Scotty's been having these issues for approximately 1 year, beginning when he witnessed the death of a fellow police officer who falls from the roof of a high-rise building. The police officer was trying to save Scotty's life when this occurred. The client reports that he reached out to take his hand to pull him back off the ledge of the roof where Scotty was hanging from, and he lost his balance, and the police officer fell to his death. The client reports dangling from the roof and seeing the body of his friend and colleague many stories below him on the ground. Then he was rescued from this terrible incident, and he has been dealing with the trauma of that experience ever since. He developed a severe fear of heights that caused him to have dizzy spells and feelings of spinning or falling through the air even when standing still. He also begins having dreams of the experience that cause him to wake up in the middle of the night and make it difficult for him to go back to sleep. A few months after this original trauma, Scotty observes the apparent suicide of a woman that he had fallen in love with, and she supposedly jumps from the bell tower of a church, a place that Scotty is unable to reach to stop her from jumping because of his severe fear of heights, because of his acrophobia. He has a dizzy spell as he's going up the stairs to the bell tower, and he has to turn around and go back. This event exacerbates the anxiety and guilt that Scotty was still feeling from the prior tragic incident on the rooftop. The client denies any medical concerns at the time. He denies taking any medication, and he doesn't have any allergies to any sorts of medications. He reports drinking socially and occasionally in social settings, but he denies having any past history of substance abuse. He denies any suicidal ideation, though he has had feelings of depression, and he has recently witnessed a suicide. So it is important to monitor that behavior, even though he feels that he is not having any of those feelings now. He reports feeling angry when he discovered that his friend had lied to him and manipulated him into believing that the woman that he loved had killed herself. But he asserts that he is not a violent person, and he doesn't have any long-standing issues with anger or violence. Shortly after the supposed death of the woman that he loved, the coroner characterizes the client as a weak person, and this escalates the severity of Scotty's symptoms by saying to the jury that he claims he suffered a mental blackout and knew nothing more until he found himself back in his own apartment in San Francisco several hours later. You may accept that or not, the judge says, or the coroner, or you may believe that having once again allowed someone to die, he could not face the tragic result of his own weakness and ran away. Scotty reports feeling responsible for both deaths that he had recently witnessed, and the remarks that the coroner had made only made him feel worse about both situations. Following the coroner's inquest, The client was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in San Francisco for a period of 6 months and was diagnosed with acute melancholia together with a guilt complex. The doctor said that the client blamed himself for what happened to the woman that he loved because he wasn't able to save her life, and that he was still suffering from the intense psychological stress of the first trauma on the rooftop. Throughout most of his stay in the hospital, the client displayed features of a catatonic stupor, which is defined as markedly slowed motor activity, often to the point of immobility and seeming unawareness of surroundings. After being released from the hospital, the client reports becoming obsessed with a woman who reminds him of the woman he had loved and thought had committed suicide. While dating this new woman, he reports convincing her to alter her appearance to look even more like the woman he thought was dead. He says he feels that he had obsessive thoughts about wanting to change her appearance so that she could look even more like the woman he thought had died. During this process, he realized that she was the same person, and he confronted her about the fake suicide and the cover-up. He reports being aggressive with her, and because of this frustration to want to know the truth, he may have been too aggressive with her. He reports taking her to the same church bell tower where she had supposedly jumped before. He says he regrets being so harsh and forceful with her because he may have unintentionally pushed her towards actually committing suicide. He's still feeling a great deal of guilt as a response to this. He reports reliving the experience of the traumatic loss and overwhelming guilt, and he says he feels ashamed for being unable to prevent her death. Scotty is currently living in his San Francisco apartment, financially secure after an early retirement from the police force. He reports having once been a lawyer with a dream to become the chief of police, but he never pursued that dream. He says he quit the police force because he didn't want to sit behind a desk, chairborne, in his words. And after he developed his phobia, he felt that he was not going to be able to continue working as a police officer. He reports having been engaged to a woman in college whom he has maintained a close friendship with. He reports that she has been helping him adjust to his inability to function as a result of the trauma, and that she's been doing research on various coping strategies and therapies, such as music therapy, to help him with his traumatic experiences.